Songs and Tropes podcast where books and friendships collide. I'm Becca.
And I'm Keri, and we're two friends who love to talk about books. And today we are talking about chapters 1 through 10 of Powerless by Lauren Roberts.
Yep. If you have any questions about trigger warnings for this book, it'll be linked in our show notes.
Yeah, and we will be spoiling up to chapter 10 of Powerless today. So if you haven't read up to the end of chapter 10, we'll be waiting for you when you're done.
Exactly. So now it is time for our one-sentence summaries for our the beginning of Powerless. I'm so excited.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. Chapter 1. Paedyn steals some fabric and some sticky buns and brings them back to her makeshift home with Adina, where they enjoy each other's company.
Chapter 2. On a hot summer day, Kai and Kit are in the training circle using not only physical force, but their powers in a friendly fight where Kai showcases his rare ability to use others' powers.
Chapter 3. Paedyn notices the lack of Imperials while she spends the morning stealing before finding a strange note and before she has to prove her psychic abilities to the Imperial, who just can't take a hint.
Chapter 4. After a successful night of thieving, Paedyn notices a tall stranger with a bag of coins attached to his person and falls into him, and even though he's charming, she still takes his coins.
Chapter 5. Kai gets orders from his father to, quote, eradicate the problem of an ordinary in the city, but Kai shows mercy to the young girl, kind of.
Chapter 6. A girl falls into Kai's arms, but when he's distracted by many things, she gets away with his coins and starts having an even worse day when a silencer attempts to kill him, and all he can see is silver hair in the distance.
Chapter 7. Paedyn is excited about showing her prize to Adina before she gets involved with a silencer and trying to save the man she robbed earlier, and has to prove her psychic abilities yet again.
Chapter 8. Because Paedyn saved the prince, she is now what she doesn't need to be as a thief. Visible, and goes to the banner where her name is on the 6th ever Purging Trials list.
Chapter 9. Kai can't stop thinking about the silver-haired psychic who saved his life while interrogating, sparring, and getting some surprising news about Jax and her.
Chapter 10. Paedyn rushes to say goodbye to Adina before going to training for the Purging Trials, and she meets some of her fellow contestants who are already annoying. Don't like them. Well, at least Ace.
I don't think anybody could like Ace.
They do. We'll need to have a little chat. Yeah. But that brings us to our Meet Cute section where we introduce certain characters that we met in this part. So for this, we're focusing on 4 people. So the first is Paedyn, obviously. Paedyn is our female main character. She is an ordinary who pretends to be a psychic in order to stay unnoticed. She is a thief, an orphan, homeless, and her father was a mender, right?
I think he was a healer.
Healer.
Yeah.
I was thinking of, I always get those confused. Healer. Should I start that over? Okay. I don't mind. Anyways. Her father suffered a extremely brutal death, and she had to run away. And she does have a lot of trauma from this. But she's witty, she's smart, and she is sassy. So obviously I love her already. Our next meet cute is Kai. So Kai is our male main character, and he's the second son of the king, whose mother was the king's second wife. So he actually has the ability to feel and use others' powers for himself. He's a skilled fighter and will be the future enforcer. He also has a soft spot, which I'm here to see more of that, and has a thing for certain girls with silver hair. Dun, dun. Or at least I'm assuming. He's definitely intrigued by her.
Yeah, he's definitely intrigued.
Anyways, we have Adina. So Adina is Paedyn's BFF, her partner in crime, literally. They, quote, live together by the fort. She is skilled with sewing and loves a good fabric. She doesn't know who her father is, and her mother has died. Adina and Paedyn met when Paedyn put her foot in front of the guard to trip him so Adina could get away, and she chased her until she caught up. They've been alliances and friends ever since.
Yep.
So we already know we have our best friend character to love here.
Oh, yes. I literally, when I was doing the outline for this, I was like, we're gonna love Adina. It doesn't matter, just because she's the best friend.
She's the sidekick best friend. We love it. All right, so our last meet cute is Kit. So Kit is Kai's older half-brother, the firstborn son of the king who will inherit the throne one day, and his mother has died. So Kit is also a skilled fighter and has the dual power of fire and water. note about this, he's not as skilled as Kai, as we can tell through the book. But we don't know too much about him quite yet, so we may come back to him. But since he was pretty present in Kai's POV, I wanted to go ahead and mention him now. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Good job, Keri.
Thanks.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to our quotables. And just as a reminder, since this is the first episode, we're doing it a little bit differently. We are going to obviously be talking about the quotes and parts that captured our attention, but we're also going to do more of like a plot deep dive in this, and just kind of go through those different things. For those of you who have read Powerless, at least up to chapters 10, you notice that we get a lot of repetitive, because it's a dual POV, we get a lot of repetitive scenes. So we're going to try to summarize those together and make it a little bit more timeline oriented, and just kind of go through it while we're also highlighting the quotables that we want to talk about too. So
Yeah.
we're changing it up a little bit. Hope you like it. Let us know if you don't, but
or if you do like it.
yeah, also let us know if you do like it. We'd love to know. But yeah, so that's going to be our quotables from now, at least through Powerless and probably Reckless, and we'll see how this goes.
Thanks, Becca.
I also want to highlight really quick that I have already read this full book and Keri has not. So
That's
Keri
true.
may be asking some questions that I'm not going to theorize about, and that's going to be really hard for me because, as you all know, I'm the theorizing one.
Yeah.
I like trying to figure things out. So just know that that's going to happen. Oh, Keri. Okay. So we know, and I didn't warn you about this, so this episode is not going to cover it as much, but I want you to think about when the word powerless is mentioned in the book, because it's mentioned a few times. I also want you to think about when the word reckless is mentioned in the book. So for our listeners who don't know, obviously Powerless is the name of this book, but Reckless is the name of the sequel, well, the second book in the series to this book. So both of those words are mentioned pretty frequently in this book, and Keri, I want you to take notice of when they're mentioned.
If I miss any, let me know too.
I mean, I'll let you know. I will also probably miss some too, but
Our listeners can help us out.
for sure.
Awesome. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So we start off this super action-packed, just like immediately. We're thrown in chapters 1, like Paedyn's getting away from a guard, ruining Adina's stitches, getting honey everywhere, like boom, intense. Like, so much is happening. So we learn that Paedyn holds 2 very special things with her at all times, and I think this is gonna be, if I had to guess, her father's ring and her dagger are gonna be very important throughout the book.
Okay.
So it's already been mentioned this entire part already. So they take, like, even Kai notices the ring on her hand when they like are close together. But just something I wanted to point out there that I think that's going to be important. But
Okay.
Paedyn and Adina, as we have already talked about, have this really, really special dynamic, which I love. Paedyn steals, Adina sews. They're a great team, and they've been doing this together for 5 years since they were young girls. And I think that's important to note because they were only like 13 when they started this, and now they're still very young girls at 18, 18, 19, I'm assuming. So it's very interesting. I mean, it is a YA fantasy, but both of them have already been through a lot and are still going through a lot, and they're surviving and thriving in a certain way, but they're getting fed eventually.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So they're surviving. How are they surviving?
Yeah, so obviously Paedyn is thieving. She steals food, she steals coin, she steals like whatever she can get, like fruit they mention, like she's very sneaky. But she also steals, importantly, some fabric for like once a week, I think she said, or once a month or something, for Adina to make clothes, which then Adina sells and gets money for, which is really cool. So they have this, I love this dynamic. They have this whole little system going.
Yeah. Would you say that Paedyn thinks they're thriving?
No. Like she also says like I just want to steal a cot like one of these days. So,
Yep.
they're not technically thriving, but they have a good system to survive. They're
Mm-hmm.
thriving in their system, I
Yeah.
should say.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wanted to talk through this point where her and Paedyn are like Paedyn does like freaks out when she's like Adina says thank the plague. So that whole saying we get it kind of a background of the story which I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
So it's thanking a plague that killed thousands and altered humanity forever, which created the elites and the ordinary, which also created their situation. Like they're in this situation because of the plague.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to bring out a quote. She says, because not all those who survived the plague were fortunate enough to be gifted with abilities, no, the ordinaries were just that, ordinary.
Yep.
So I thought it was cool that the ordinaries and elites actually used to live in peace. Like, I assumed before reading this part that they always, like, lived against each other. Like it was
Okay.
always the ordinaries versus the elites. So I thought it was interesting that King Edric, which I'm assuming is Kai's father, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he decreed that ordinaries did not belong in this kingdom. And that was just, I immediately hated the guy. Like, gross.
Yeah.
So interesting there. But once this wild ideology is caught on, like the healers claimed that the ordinaries were the ones spreading the illness, except for Paedon's dad. I want to note that. And this is how the purging of ordinaries really began and why they thought they needed to get rid of them and how that like really took off.
Yeah.
But I want to stop here really, really quick. And I think just like that this history lesson here about the world of Powerless is like one major info dump, right? But I feel like this resembles a lot of people's histories where their people were forced to live elsewhere because they were thought to spread illness or disease or sickness. So I just thought it was an interesting connection and a good way to like talk about an issue that is also present in our own history. So hats
Yeah.
off to Lauren Roberts for
So,
sneaking that in.
something there. So, I kind of want to pause here because I have two notes that I want to talk through. So, first of all, Keri, you and I talked about this before, but when I think about this book, like it was hard for me to get into. Like the first chapter was difficult for me
Mhm.
until I realized I'm basically reading Aladdin. Like
Yes.
it's literally like Paedyn is Aladdin. She steals and then brings it back to the fort for Adina, who's a boo, and they have their little thing and
I didn't even
whatever.
realize both A names.
Yeah, so I thought that was hilarious. Like once it clicked in my brain, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is Aladdin." And I think of like the what the song when he's like running away from the king's guards or not the king, the sultan's guards, and it just cracked me up because that was like all of chapter 1. So I was just really appreciating that. Um but the second thing that I kind of wanted to highlight here was that um and I didn't catch this until I was like reading through these chapters again, but there's a map at the beginning of the book. And in the beginning of the book, on the right hand side is the kingdom of Ilia, right? And on the left hand side, in the top left corner, there's a separate piece of land that is like across this sea, I guess. I'm like looking at the map. I'm trying to like summarize it. Um,
I
which
ignore maps completely. So I'm like, this is not applicable until I read.
Well, I guess it's not. I guess it's the shallows. I don't really anyways, that's besides the point. But what's interesting, and I wanted to kind of I wanted to kind of dig into like what you just said about like the plague creating ordinaries and elites, which it did. It created this mutation that allowed people to be born with powers. But the kingdom of Ilia closed its doors when this plague happened. So they closed their doors and purged the ordinaries out of the kingdom. So, with them being out of the kingdom, like when they're basically banished, like Kai does, when ordinaries are banished, the goal is to have this like elite that's funny. This like elite race of people who only have powers. There's no ordinaries, right? So, and this is not a spoiler because we don't get this information in Powerless, but I'm very interested to see if we get it in Reckless. Because like most times, if we get a map in a fantasy book and there's multiple, like they expand. So, like, I'm wondering if we get more information in future books about the people outside of the kingdom.
And I wonder, like, I know, and we can talk about this later. I think I talk about this with Kai when he like banishes the family. But I was kind of thinking, will they actually die, or is there a secret system in place that like kind of protects, like a District 13 situation in the Hunger
Yeah.
Games? Because they're a secret underground kingdom that like protects people who are ordinary and or banished from the kingdom. So there's a little, if I'm right, we'll come back to that.
You'll know when you know.
No, is that going to be your
That's
phrase?
gonna be my.
I like that. I love that. Well done. I love that. I know you'll know when you know.
It's like if you know, you know. You'll know when you
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
That's basically my for our listeners. We were trying to figure out a catchphrase that I could use to like neither confirm nor deny what Keri was theorizing or if we
Mhm.
know anything. So that's gonna be it. Is you'll know when you know.
Be like, oh, interesting. Because yesterday it was like, okay, okay.
Okay. It
I
was just
still
gonna
like that
be
one.
okay.
You should use both.
Yeah, we may have both. We'll see.
I love it.
Okay.
All right. So later on in her POV, Paedyn goes about her normal thieving, but notices something amiss. There are less Imperials lining the street. Of course, I'm like, ding ding ding, I need to pay attention to this too. But pushed by her hunger, Paedyn finds a target and she steals not only his coins, but a tiny piece of paper with a note that says to meet at her old house,
Mm-hmm.
which is sketchy. So she hasn't been back since her father died. She ran away. She doesn't want to go back, which is understandable, but I'm very interested to see further developments on that and why her house. And interesting that she found it.
Well, this is interesting to me because why hasn't she gone back? Like she's living on the streets and doesn't have a roof over her head. Like why is she not at that house?
Imagine, I was thinking for two reasons. One, the trauma, obviously, but then
Mm-hmm.
two, um, like the danger in it. Like, then they'll know she's an ordinary, I guess. Maybe more danger for that. I don't know. I guess I'll know when I know.
Okay.
Uh, anyways, later on in this section, we get to see her psychic, quote, powers in action with a drunk and annoying Imperial officer, and we learn about the Purging Trials just a little bit. I do wish we got more info, but I know that's probably coming. And we do learn that they're created to showcase the supernatural abilities of the elites. And we have one of my favorite quotes from Paedyn so far. And she says, "There have been very few times in my life when I haven't envied the elites." So I I think this gives us a clear understanding of who she is and who her character is. And we get to see this girl who is determined, strong, and her father's training has been like really, really good training. So she's a fighter, obviously. She's very strong-willed and she doesn't envy them. Like I feel like in her situation, I would. So she seems very strong mentally. So love that. Do you have anything to add?
I think that you nailed it.
Okay. Okay, now I'm ready to get into Kai a little bit.
Okay. Ooh, we got an excited.
Okay, so just some things that we noticed about Kai at first. He prefers physical fighting rather than power fighting. He feels alive when he fights. His father's words to Kit and Kai, respectively, of course, are a dim-witted king is a dead king, and a dim-witted enforcer is a defeated empire, which I think is foreshadowing for something.
Okay.
I loved the banter between the two brothers in chapter two and how they seem to balance each other out. Like, Kai is very, like, I'm a killer, I'm a fighter, whereas, like, Kit is just, like, very, like, oh, yeah, like, blah, blah, blah. So, Kai actually says, Kit is a king where I am a killer. So, we get that very big distinction.
Mm-hmm. So I want you um to think about as we're reading through this book too, like listen to Kai's inner monologue and how he thinks about himself
Mm.
because it's very interesting.
I feel like he thinks of himself worse than he is. That's my theory.
I So this is interesting because inner monologues tend to take on, especially at this age, they tend to change from what are you laughing at? Oh, it's fine.
I'm sorry. It was just funny.
um,
Sorry.
that's okay. But inner monologues tend to start switching at this age from a parent and what parents say and do and what their thoughts are to people finding their own thoughts and thought patterns. So I want you to think about that as we're going through this book, as well as what he thinks about himself throughout the book and like the names that he gives himself. Because I think I didn't do it for this episode, and I think that I am going to start doing that moving forward
I'm gonna write this down.
because I'm interested to see how the names he gives himself progresses.
Moving on. Blair is annoying. I think you talk about her later. Um, so just wanted to state that for myself. She needs to go away. But she uses her mind to pull a dagger close to Kai's neck, and then we get to see his powers again, where he becomes it, the specific ability being used against him. So just a really cool showcase of his power. And then I just thought this was a really funny scene where he gets like all the giggly girls where he goes inside and he doesn't realize he's shirtless. So I thought that was cute.
I think that, and I'm going to point this out in my section too, but I think that Lauren Roberts does such a good job of like showing us things rather than just telling us things.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is such a clear representation that Kai is very attractive, right?
Yeah.
Like not that we doubted it before, but
If a
like
male MC is not, something is wrong. In
yes.
YA fantasy, anyway.
Yes. But getting the girls all giggling and like they like get secretive or whatever, like when he walks in the room, like I think that goes to show like he's super attractive, but I think that it also goes to show his character because they don't freeze, right? And we think about like his power, like he is the king's son, he is a prince. So like they could all be terrified of him and like freeze, but like they're giggling in his presence and having a good time. And I think that goes to show his character a lot too.
Yeah, that's a great point. You catch that about it. There you go. All right, let's move on to Paedyn and Kai, the meeting, which is chapters 4 through 5. So, after a successful night of thieving and about to go in for the night, Paedyn notices a tall stranger dressed in all black. Of course, we love a male main
Of
character
course.
dressed in all black. Like, he's got his shirt, like, half unbuttoned and, like, very Zayden vibes. Like, dressed in Zayden vibes. That's just what I saw.
Okay.
He walks with confidence. Immediately, Paedyn can tell a few things here. He's handsome. He's inoffensive. He's an elite of higher status or noble blood, and he's tall.
Mm-hmm.
Then she does her whole routine of running into him and notices a few other things. His chest with a dark tattoo, his eyes that are like a storm and the color of thunderclouds. He's a
Mm-hmm.
fighter, he's cocky, he's a pretty boy with pretty words, which is a direct quote, and he's got scars, which she seems to like as like a haha. But then we jump in. Sorry.
Wait, what do you mean?
What?
You said she's like, haha. What do you mean?
Because like some like people of noble blood, like elite of noble blood, also has scars. Like she and the other lesser elites. Like he's been in a fight and he's like
Okay.
experienced pain, that type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. I'm following now.
Okay, sorry. All right, so then in chapter 5, we jump to Kai's point of view, where we learn that he received a mission from his father to kill an ordinary, which is why he is in Loot Alley in the first place and when he meets Paedyn. So
Mm-hmm.
we also get to learn a little bit about the king and his son's relationship, and I wanted to pull out one quote here specifically. It says, "He's a brutal man, a brawny who is strong physically as well as mentally. He's stern, stubborn, and set in his ways, so seeing him offer even the faintest of smiles has me involuntarily returning a faint one of my own." So I feel like this poor guy just wants his dad's approval, and that made me really sad.
Yeah.
But we learned some things about Kai here. Obviously, this section is what we learned about Kai, but the king made Kai a weapon to use at his disposal. So, like, Kai himself is a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
The king made him, Kai, physically and mentally strong. The king learned his weaknesses and ensured they were no longer weaknesses. The king wants him to endure suffering, and he has a reputation.
Okay. Do we learn? So, like, the king learns his weaknesses and ensured they were no longer weaknesses. Do we learn anything about how the king did that in this section?
I can't remember. I don't think
Okay.
so because I think it was a really short sentence.
Okay. That's fine.
I would be
I couldn't
interested to learn
remember.
more, though.
Okay.
Yeah. But this whole scene of Kai going into these people's house looking for that ordinary and it being just a little girl was so intense. Like it had me on the edge of my seat. Like first of all, amazing writing by Lauren Roberts because she had me like in the story. Like I felt like I was watching a show. Like and I was just like sitting on the edge of my couch like reading like what's gonna happen? So first of all, just hats off to Lauren Roberts. And secondly, I was like, oh no, this man is not morally gray. He's not a good guy at all. Because I thought he was actually gonna kill her. And then when he let them go, kinda again, for a freedom, which I am theorizing may have been freedom. We don't know. But I still felt bad for this family based on the stuff we know and that they probably are dead. So my heart goes out to them. Think we get like a really clear view and understanding too of the people's journey too. So not only are we seeing Paedyn and Kai's, like we get a picture of the culture there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We did not talk about this at the beginning, and we probably should have. So moving forward, we will have Keri will be doing the first 5 chapters in our thing, and then I will be doing the second 5 chapters, the last 5 chapters,
Mm-hmm.
since we're doing 10 chapters in each section of Powerless,
Yeah,
I guess. So,
each week.
okay. So now, after Kai condemns the girl and her family to death, he's walking the streets of Loot, and he's actually enjoying himself walking through the streets of Loot. And we get this quote, and it says, "There's nothing regal about the slums of Ilya, and yet it's refreshing in a way the stuffy palace never could be." So I think this is really interesting because, like, he's actually enjoying himself walking around, and, like, he talks about how like it's brimming with life and like there's so much action and there's so many things, like despite them being poor, like they're still living their life, and he just really enjoys being in this place, right? And as he's thinking this, Paedyn slams right into him and he is instantly captivated with her, right? So
instantly.
You talked about what Paedyn learns about Kai. Let's talk about what Kai learns about Paedyn in this meeting. So we have right away, his hand already feels comfortable on her waist, which is ding, 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 alarm, 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 right?
It's the
Could
eyebrows.
could we have any clear of evidence that these two, he's intrigued, right?
Oh, he
Okay.
is.
So then he notices that she's lean. He notices her thick ring, which you talked about earlier. He drowns in her eyes. And I love the imagery of how he describes her eyes because we already know that they're blue, right? We already are aware of that. But he like is like it's like drowning in an ocean when he looks at her, which I just love.
They both talk about their eyes. Like like they're thinking about their eyes. Like each other is comparing it to things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cute. I was a
Yeah.
huge fan. I said,
I love it. Um, okay, he feels nothing when he reaches for her powers. He thinks he's tired and it could be a mistake. So I want to dig into this piece a little bit. So Kai says he's automatically intrigued by her, right? And the first thing he does is he's curious about her power and he reaches for it. And I think that's so interesting because I am very like that makes me feel like the powers that people are given are shape their personality or vice versa. Their personality shapes the powers that they're given. So he's like, oh, like this girl is so intriguing. I have to know what powers she has. Like she's got to have a cool one, right? But it also goes to show like he's super nosy.
oh yeah.
Like he's just like in it and just like I'm just gonna tell. Like she doesn't even have to tell me, but he finds nothing obviously because she doesn't have a power, and he just. I also think this is such pretty privilege when like he's like, oh, I can't find it. I must be tired and it must be a mistake. But there was no question about it when it was the little girl. So
Oh yeah.
take that as you leave it. Take that as you want, but
Do you think it also could have been like a battle strategy or like a fighter strategy that he like picks up on people's powers pretty quickly,
yeah.
like reaches for them?
Well, you notice in the training ground that that's what he does. Like he's training and he's always searching for powers. Like he's always doing that and he can do it intentionally, which we see here, but he that's just like what he's comfortable with because that's what he's trained with for like it seems like his whole life at this point. Good thought.
I like yours.
And then they walk away and he realizes he was robbed. And he gets like so irritated. He's like, "Oh, she robbed me." And then he gets into a fight because these other four men decide that he is also a target to rob because he's walking around loot with this huge thing.
That's his own
Purse.
fault.
Right. It's his own fault because like what are you doing, Kai?
What are you
Like,
doing? You're in the
You're
slums.
in the slums.
Like you're gonna get robbed.
Figure it out, my friend. Okay. So he gets into an alley and he ends up fighting with two brawnies, a blazer, and a crawler, and apparently a silencer. And this, I think, this scene shows that like the difference in all of those powers really well and how they're all very useful in a fight. And I think Lauren Roberts does such a good job of describing the powers and like what each person is doing at a given time and like how it works out and all those things. So I think that was like I loved reading through this fight scene because it was so like I don't know, beautifully written.
It was an info dump without being an info dump.
Yes, exactly. Good, good job. That was perfect. Okay. So Kai is in this fight, and I'm gonna jump to chapter 7 for a second in Paedon's point of view before we go back. So I'd like to add that from Paedon's POV, we get the note that the small crowd is gathering, watching this fight, and they are doing absolutely nothing. And I want to highlight that this is something that's really common in society and in like in our society specifically, and it's a psychological phenomenon called the bystander effect. So little did you guys know you were going to get a psych lesson today when we were talking about books. But the bystander effect is basically the idea that if you're watching something happen, like a crime or anything like that, the automatic assumption is that somebody else is not going to do something, like somebody else will take care of the problem. And I think it's I don't remember how large the crowd needs to be in order for that to be the assumption, but it's really like a small number. I think it's like 3 people, maybe 4 people to be around where like the bystander effect takes place. Obviously, depending on the crime and like whatever happens, but there have been a ton of studies about it, and like this is so common. It's such a common phenomenon that like when you're in school, that's why the see something say something is so powerful and so prevalent, because that comes from this bystander effect in the studies that they've done. um so I just thought that was really interesting, because like that's such a big thing for Paedon, is she's like, you guys are all watching like this happen, like are you not going to do anything about it? Are you not going to try to break up this fight that is happening? Hi, Esther. She just like popped her head up.
Yeah, she really wants to talk about this book too.
um, but what I thought was also interesting is like when she sees Kai on the ground with the silencer, like silencing his powers, she only sees her father and only sees the parallels there, and that's what springs her into action.
Yeah, like she got a second chance, kind of like spoiler alert in like the Spider-Man Marvel, where you have like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man getting a second chance. That's
Mm-hmm.
immediately what I thought of.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so back to Kai's point of view. He is on the ground writhing in pain from this silencer. And he looks over and he says, like, he sees a mass of silver hair. And I loved this line in general because, again, this is an amazing show don't tell of, like, we know that the mass of silver hair is Paedon as readers by this point. Like, it's been very clear that that's her.
Yeah.
But we also get the imagery of the sun glinting off her hair, which to me means she's moving, right? Because suns doesn't glint off of things that don't move.
Yeah.
So she's moving and she's coming for the silencer because she's behind the silencer. And this perfectly primes us to go to Paedon's POV and like see what she's doing and what she's thinking, and knowing that she's going to do something for in this fight, which I just thought was so beautiful in such like it's one sentence at the end of the chapter, but like it was just perfectly primed for us as readers. Okay, so Paedon is involved and can't be controlled by the silencer because of her, quote, psychic abilities, and she starts fighting our girl. Thank you for fighting.
We love a fighter.
And she's channeling her rage into the fight, right? And we get all of this, like, my rage for my father's death, punch. My rage for living in the slums, punch. And we get this beautiful, like, every single punch that she, like, goes through is riddled with this rage.
Yeah.
Go Paedon, first of all, for kicking
girl.
the silencer's butt, because she just straight up knocks him out, and great job.
Go Paedon.
And then the Imperials come in and they kneel in front of the prince, and she's like, what is going on? Because she still doesn't know he's the prince at this point.
That's true.
And she takes her leave, but he catches her, and they have to deal with her psychic powers again. And all I have to say is she would be a wonderful FBI profiler in the Criminal Minds.
Oh my gosh, yes. She would be up there with Spencer, right? Is his name?
Yes, yes. She's so good. So
So
good. I
good.
love the little details, especially because how Lauren Roberts writes it. She writes it in a way that helps us readers come to the conclusion that she does before she tells us what the conclusion is.
Yeah.
So like um the shoes, well, that's not a really good one because we already knew Kai was in the Scorches, but we get like with the Imperial, right? When she talks through, he doesn't have a wedding band, but it's still on the other hand, and like he's drunk and like all these things, like, and we come to the conclusion before, like at the same time that Paedyn does, which I think is really fun. We also get a very, very clear confirmation during this exchange that she hates his guts, just not only because of who he is and who he's related to, um, but this to me is confirmation that we have enemies right here, right? And I would like to argue that it is enemies to lovers because maybe Kai doesn't hate her right now because he keeps calling her darling and he's very intrigued. But like we get confirmation that she is enemies. And I would argue that at this point it's a life or death situation because she's an ordinary.
Yeah, and he's an enforcer, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not looking good for their future.
Not looking good. But he's impressed with her, starts calling her darling, and I'm here for it. And then he goes, yeah, and you were right. The ladies love me. And I'm here to say, I agree. The ladies love him for sure. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about with that scene?
You
No.
perfectly described it. Here for
Awesome. Okay. So the next day, the day after she saves Kai's life, and I'm going to keep pointing that out because it's very important that she saved his life. Paedyn is walking the streets, but she's not invisible like she would like to be, right? So she is used to being a thief. She's used to slipping in and out of the shadows. She's used to nobody really noticing her, and it makes her very uncomfy that she has all of these eyes on her the whole time, and she can't really do her job because she can't thief because
she
everybody's
really
watching
can't.
her.
And that will affect her later. Like if she like didn't get selected for the purging trials, like she would not be able to thieve as easily.
Exactly.
Because they'd
Yep.
be like, oh, that's the girl that saved Prince Kai.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, so obviously there's whispers that follow her wherever she goes, and we get this very clear a man calls her the Silver Savior. So the people are enthralled with her and love her. And what's interesting to me is the people are the ones who vote other like mundanes, I guess, into the purging trials. And the people voted for her to be in the purging trials. Like she sees this banner, which is, first of all, nobody knows her before yesterday. Like, how does
Literally.
everybody know what her name is?
Who knows?
That's what I would love to know. Secondly, like, you want to thank her for like being the Silver Savior, and the way you thank her is by putting her into trials where she's gonna die.
Yeah. But it is like a honorable type thing. Like they view it as like an honorable event, like to be chosen for.
That's true. That's true. Still not the
It's not
greatest.
good, but like that's how they view it.
It's like volunteering her as a tribute.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is,
Yep.
which is obnoxious. Okay, so at the same time that all of this is happening, Kai is interrogating the silencer that broke him the day before, and he's getting nowhere. He's torturing him, all the things, utterly disappointing his father, getting absolutely no information out of him. And he's torturing the silencer, and all he can think about is her. Okay, so I just have to jump in here because I just have to say that I love knowing that my husband is thinking about me when I am not with him. When he sends me videos during the day, it's my favorite thing because I know he saw something and he thought of me and he wanted to share it with me. I think that's
Sweet.
why flowers are important when husbands bring home flowers. If you are a husband listening to this episode, bring home your wife flowers on a random Tuesday. Just bring her flowers to let her know that you're thinking of her. With all that said, I love knowing that my husband is thinking about me. I don't know that I would be okay being thought about my while somebody was torturing somebody else. That may be my line that I need to draw, that I don't want to be thought about during that time. Like, would you be okay being thought about during the
Oh,
torture?
no.
No.
No. Not even a little.
I was just like, maybe that's not,
It's a ucky.
that maybe that's not it. Okay, so here we meet the king again, and he's beyond rude to his son to the
Hate him.
point where I wanted to reach through the pages and punch him in his stupid face. And from now on, I think I will think of the king as Thanos from the Avengers. We have multiple Avengers references
I
today. Look at
know.
us go.
Not even planned.
I know.
We'll put
But
Thanos right here on there.
But I like to think of him as Thanos because they have similar thought patterns, especially with like trying to get rid of um, the ordinaries, right? And they both have stupid faces.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know that for sure, but
But we can assume.
here we are. Yep. Okay. But this is one of the first times we hear about the resistance and how much Kai and Kit have been conditioned to think that they are correct and that the resistance is selfish for wanting the ordinaries to live, which, like, let's follow
We've
that
been
logic for a
so
second.
brainwashed. Sad.
So brainwashed. Yep. Okay, so then after that, we get this scene where Kai and Kit are sparring, and this is like the definition of brotherly camaraderie because Kit is giving Kai so much crap. He knows he's thinking about Paedyn. He knows that he cannot stop thinking about Paedyn, and it's just hilarious. And Kai is not having any of it. He throws a knife at his brother to be like,
Really?
shut up. Real classy
Future
Kai.
king. The future king, you're just...
Right?
He doesn't care. He's just like, whatever. You're
Yep.
my brother.
Yep.
Shut up.
Exactly. And Jax shows up, which we hear about Jax and how he was kind of the adopted brother. And they start watching Blair and Sadie, who are two other nobles, right? So Blair, to me, is just like Blair Waldorf in Gossip Girl. Have you ever seen Gossip Girl?
I haven't. I know. It's on my to watch list. Even Jesse has seen it.
Well, you need to watch it so you understand my Gossip Girl references. Okay, so Sadie comes over and basically is like, congratulations, you two, for like getting chosen for the Purging Trials or whatever. And nobody knows this, but Kai puts the pieces together and he's like, oh, Jax is in it too. So now we have 4 more contenders for the Purging Trials. So we have Kai, Jax, Blair, Sadie, and her, who is Paedyn. So
It's going to be a very interesting mix because you have a lot of like nobles and you have a lot of people that we're probably going to care about. It's going to be interesting.
very interesting. Okay. So I named this little section Going to the Castle because all I could think about was the song Go into the chapel and we're gonna get married. But we're going to the castle instead. So the
And they're
Imperial
not
come
getting married.
and they're not getting married. They're gonna go die.
Yikes.
Well, they're at least gonna go compete in the Purging Trials. So the Imperial comes to get Paedyn, and the Imperial is kind and shows her a kindness and says, no, you have 5 minutes. You can go say goodbye to whoever you need to. So she goes and says goodbye to Adina, and it's absolutely heartbreaking because we love side characters, and we've already fallen in love with Adina at this point, and we're 10 chapters in, and we're already leaving her. And we get this, like, will I ever see her again from Paedyn? And it's just like heartbreaking. And it's hard for us as readers because we don't know. Like, we don't know if she's ever going to see Adina again. And both of them talk about how, like, we get this quote from Adina and it's, you're all I have left, you know? And we don't know anything about Adina's backstory. But we get confirmation from Paedyn. Paedyn says, yeah, I know, you're all I have left too. And it's
It broke
like
my heart.
so sad. So it was just heartbreaking, and I may have shed a tear. Um,
See, also, it reminded me a lot, and we'll probably compare this to Hunger Games quite a bit. So if you listen to our book bait episode,
yes.
like I do know that it's like kind of like Hunger Games in a way, but it reminded me of like when Katniss and Prim were saying goodbye during the first
Oh,
one
yeah.
and the second one, for being honest.
Well, they don't get to say goodbye the second
That's
time,
true.
remember?
But they
I just
knew.
watched those movies.
They but they knew that she was the only female tribute, so they had
That's
like the
true.
night before.
That's true. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You right. Okay, so as James Madison and Hamilton would say, we're going to get back to politics so we can stop crying.
Yes.
And we get into the carriage and we meet Ace and Hera. And Ace is a jerk, and
Yep.
Hera is nice enough compared to Ace, but we don't really know too much about her.
Yeah.
And then we end it off with them going to the castle
Yeah.
for training.
I
So,
do have to say I love Ace's nickname.
yes, he's got a good nickname.
It's a great nickname, and we didn't even have to come up with it ourselves.
Nope, we
Love it.
didn't. But yeah, so that's the first 10 chapters of Powerless. Carrie, did you want to add anything else?
No, it was great. Loving it.
Awesome.
All right, let's move into our tomes and tonics. This is what our previous, if you listen to Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, this is our sipping the tea. But since we are less tea themed, we're moving to more of like a fantasy drink type. Tonics could mean anything from tea to coffee to alcoholic beverages,
To
anything. So
juice.
we are broad here. Mocktails, everything. Any beverage is on the table for this section.
Yep.
But because I'm worked at Starbucks for 5 years, most of my drinks will probably be that. But we are going to talk about in this section the 4 characters that we talked about in Meet Cutes. So we're going to start with Paedyn. I said a cold brew, an iced coffee, or a strawberry refresher. Now, I understand that's 3 very large different things, but I have an explanation.
Okay.
So, at Starbucks, when you mobile order, your drink just sits there. These 3 drinks are probably the most popular drinks and would be the quickest to grab and the easiest to like remake and think that, oh, someone just took mine. So it would be easy to thieve.
Oh,
So that's why I picked those.
smart.
What did you pick for Paedyn?
That's so interesting. I never would have even like put those together. That's your Starbucks brain going to
Yeah,
work.
many people stole.
Okay. I'm gonna say that she's a blueberry lemonade from
Ooh.
Wendy's.
Ooh, I never had that.
Their lemonades are so good. But I'm choosing a lemonade for Paedyn because I think she is sweet, but she packs a punch. And I'm giving blueberry because I feel like she would appreciate the little luxury of having the extra flavoring in her lemonade.
Yeah, it's something a little heavier.
Yeah.
I love that. I'll have to go try a blueberry lemonade from Wendy's. Is
You
it
should.
happen? Is it like in season?
No, they have it all year round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have to find a Wendy's near me. All right, so our next one's Kai. I said a vanilla sweet cream foam cold brew, not vanilla sweet cream cold brew, but just the foam with
Okay.
a pump of hazelnut in the bottom. So it's like he enjoys his little luxury of the foam, but he also likes a good hard cold brew with like maybe just a little bite of the hazelnut.
Okay.
What did you say?
Okay, Kai is an interesting one because I think he has 2 drink orders.
Mm.
I think he has one with his father and one if it's just him and Kit.
Oh,
So I think with his father, he is just straight up black coffee with nothing. Like straight up.
valid.
I think with Kit or by himself, he's a Java chip frappuccino.
I love that.
With
Two
the
opposite
whip.
ends. Oh yeah. extra mocha.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love that.
And I think that because he like we get the confirmation that he does enjoy treats from like his time in the kitchen.
Yeah. That's why I was like, the foam would be enough of a treat, but you still get the
Mm,
hardness of a fighter with the cold foam or the cold brew. I
yeah.
love that, though. Good job. Okay, Adina. I said a dragon fruit drink because I think she would just like love the refreshingness of it, but I also think she would be one to pick something that is more mainstream because if she had the money, she would choose to be a popular.
What is a dragon fruit drink?
It's the mango dragon fruit refresher with coconut milk.
Okay.
I've never had it because I am deathly allergic.
Oh no.
Mangoes kill me.
Can I ask, when you started at Starbucks, did you have to try a bunch of different things?
It was the best time. I literally the first week of training, I would leave like shaking from the caffeine I had just had. And most of the times I worked like evening shifts for training because that's when it's less busy. And I would leave like caffeinated. I'd be up all night.
Dang. Yeah, I bet.
It was great though. What'd you say for her?
I go back and forth because I think she would be something with white mocha,
Mm.
but I also think she would love like a peppermint latte. So I think I'm gonna go white mocha peppermint latte.
I like it.
Yeah.
What about for
With
kid?
whole milk
Oh, with whole
because
milk.
she's gonna need
The
the
sustenance.
sustenance.
Yeah, that's a good point. What about Kit? What did you put for Kit? I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh goodness. Kits was like the one that I could not think of. Um,
I had like three different drinks in mind for Kit, but we don't know enough, I think, about his personality yet.
yeah. I'm trying to think. I think Kit maybe is a cold brew with a
See-
splash of almond milk.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. Cold brew, splash of almond milk.
I think I was in a fruity mood last night when I chose these. Because for him, I chose an iced black tea lemonade, but unsweetened.
Mm,
I think he'd want something refreshing after fighting.
that's true. I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's our tomes and tonics.
Yeah. Okay, and just as with our previous books, we are going to dig into the magic system a little bit with Powerless in our magical moments section. So, to start off, and I'm starting this off with a little bit of politics because I think it helps kind of set the stage. So, a little politics, my favorite. That was sarcastic. I don't like politics. Um, so we have a king who's very particular about having his people be purebred elites. So elites are obviously the ones who have powers, ordinaries are the ones who don't. The society is obviously divided between beyond just like elites and ordinaries. So the different elites have different powers as well and different classes of powers. So we have mundane powers, which is the most of the people in the slums. We have defensive powers, which are higher level elites. I think they're like mid-level. And then we have offensive elites, which are people like Kit and Kai, Blair and Sadie, and it's this different kinds of power and strengths of their power. So we also have the so beyond just the classification of elites, we also have the caste. It's kind of like a caste system, but like the class system of like slums versus noble birth, right? So we have the slums, which is loot, and then we have the castle. So our two main characters, Kai and Paedyn, could not be any more different, right? One has no powers, grew up in loot, has like very low class. The other one has one of the most rare and powerful powers that like has ever been seen, and he's a prince and grew up in the castle. So like such different sides of the spectrum, right?
Here for it.
Okay, so now to get into the magic, actually magic. Each of the elites is born with powers that spread from very useless to very, very useful. And there are mundane powers, there are defensive powers, and offensive powers, like I just said. But I don't think we understand the differences here yet between like all of the different types of powers. So like I don't think if you told me a power, I could tell you where it falls. It's just those are the different kinds of powers. This we like I said, we don't really understand this, but this is a great way for Paedyn to kind of classify herself when she's being interrogated about her powers, because she always says she's a mundane first. That's all she ever says, and then she says she's a psychic. But I want to hold on that. We're gonna hold on that. So she always says she's a mundane, and she always says she's a psychic. So that's a good way for her to kind of like hide in plain sight. Okay, so now we have the powers that we know so far. So Kit, who is the only one I think we have so far that has a dual ability, is dual fire and water power, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Right? Amazing. We have telepathy, which is Blair. Sadie's a cloner, and we get both of those from when we're watching them fight right before Kai and Kit and Jax like talk about the Purging Trials and being in them. We have a Brawny. So a Brawny is just somebody I think who's really strong. We have the dad of the girl. The king is a Brawny, and I think a couple of the Imperials we meet are Brawnies at this point.
A couple of people you said were the ones that attacked Kai.
You're right. It was the people that attacked Kai. So the Brawnies. We have a veil. So Pei mentions this when she was walking before she came up on the fight with Kai. She thought it was a veil showing off. And Hera, who is the one of the other girl that is in the carriage with them, is also a veil. We have a healer who is the mom of the little ordinary girl and also Paedyn's dad. We have a bluff who is the brother of the girl, which I think is awesome. A bluff can tell if you're lying or not. So cool. 10 out of 10. That's amazing. We have a hyper who is also a brother of the girl. We don't really learn what a hyper means, but we know that that's a power. We have a silencer, which is obviously from the fight. We have a blazer who's from the fight, and we have a crawler who's from the fight. Now, I am interested to know what the difference between a blazer and the fire power that Kit has. Like, why are those different? I wonder if, like, it's because it's the dual power. Like, could Kit do everything the blazer could? And then we also have the crawler, who's basically Spider-Man without the webs. And then we have the illusionist, who is Ace, and the wielder, who is Kai. And Kai can wield any other power that's surrounding him. But we do learn that there's a distance requirement. So we don't learn what the distance is, but when they're in the Scorches, the Imperial like goes too far and he can't run to the family. So very interesting. Lots of magic. We'll definitely keep digging into those as we get through the rest of the book. Well, thank you so much for listening to us today. If you liked today's episode, please rate and review us wherever you listen and give us 5 stars. That helps us out a lot. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to get notified of all of our new episodes. Also, the best thing you can do for us or any other podcast you listen to is share us with your friends. If you and your friends want a good refresher of Powerless before Reckless comes out, share us with them. Let us be your Powerless besties for the next 7 weeks, 6 weeks, however long it's going to be. And we'll make sure that you are ready for Reckless when it comes out.
But for more content, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Tomes and Tropes Pod. Or if you have any thoughts about this episode or this book, email us at tomesandtropespod@gmail.com. Or as always, feel free to DM us on any of those platforms. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on Powerless so far, if this is your first time reading it. If you really do want to talk spoilers, make sure to say for Becca eyes only.
Or spoilers.
Yeah, just so that I don't see it. We're really trying not to be spoiled here. But we'll see you next week when we go into chapters 11 through 20.
Stay curious and keep reading.
Bye.
Bye.